9 straight the Big Ten title and are ranked 5th in the nation. USC awaits winners of 8 in a row. The Rose Bowl game presented by Northwestern Mutual, January 2nd at 5 Eastern on ESPN Radio.
And now, Jalen and Jacoby on ESPN Radio.
When I pop the trunk, head the dirt. Y'all pop the trunk, I pop the hood.
Now act stupid, I'll pop the trunk. Now give me your boom.
He is Jalen Rose.
What up, Doe?
I'm David Jacoby. We are Jalen Jacoby on ESPN Radio. What do we do, Jalen?
We give the people what they want.
Let's do it right now on a Friday. Wow, did NBA fans got what they wanted last night? A little appetizer,
yes,
the Clippers blowing out the Cavaliers, and then the main course, a double overtime thriller between the Rockets and the Warriors in Oakland. What was your first impression from the result?
A couple of things. They set an NBA record for the most three-pointers attempted combined
88.
For two teams.
44
88.
each.
What that tells me, while the Golden State Warriors have the Splash Brothers, arguably the best shooting three-point backcourt ever, also Kevin Durant, a 4-time scoring champ, when they're not making the three-point shot, it's up to them not to settle. And I saw a lot of that happening. Those three players were 10 for 37 from three-point range. Now, while great shooters from beyond the arc, they're not one-trick ponies. And once you realize those shots aren't falling, you have to continue to attack the basket, which highlighted the second thing I saw that was an issue for the Golden State Warriors. Their lack of depth. Yes, they added more skill, adding KD, but they lost a lot of their will, in particular on their bench that got dominated as well. Their bench was outscored by 26 points.
Wow.
The Rockets had 49 points off their bench. So Eric Gordon, Montrezl Harrell, Sam Dekker, all of these players were contributors and factors in a big-time road win.
You make a good point. It's when you are Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and KD, their offense is geared for moving the ball and getting someone in open three-pointers, and they often do that. However, when they are not making those open shots, they need to have a second look. They need to have a second option. They need to drive toward the basket, find themselves some mid-range post-ups or something else. What would you do if you were Steve Kerr, you called a timeout? What would you adjust?
The adjustment has to be continue to attack the basket, drive and kick or drive and finish. Within 5 feet, they shot a terrible percentage. And normally, Steph Curry, KD are two of the best finishers we have in the league. Obviously, anytime someone misses, you want to give credit to the defense. And Ryan Anderson, who's not a defender, and Trevor Ariza, who is, did a really good job. But for the Golden State Warriors playing on their home floor, it was a wake-up call that, yes, you can win at an elite level, but are you doing it because you're outscoring teams? Or like a couple of years prior when they were dominant on both ends of the floor?
They're certainly outscoring teams this year, not having trouble doing it. You did mention Ryan Anderson, and watching this game, that was one of the biggest takeaways for me. Is there have been rumors about the Rockets trying to get Ryan Anderson for a few seasons now, and now you see exactly why. He shoots threes. He was 5 for 10, but he didn't just shoot threes. He was getting looks around the basket. James Harden was creating buckets for him. He seemed to be a really good fit. He stood out to me, and also the maturation of Clint Capella. Like, Clint Capella was sort of a project a couple seasons ago. Last season started to come into his own, so much so that they wanted Dwight Howard to sit behind Clint Capella. That didn't go over well with Dwight Howard. But now he's really turned into his own. Could you see him being the most improved player of the year?
I think he'll be in the conversation. And the reason why he can be effective, besides his ability to rim protect and block shots and give effort on that side of the ball, is that he does a really good job of finding little cracks around the basket as a slasher, as a cutter, and he can catch the lob over the top, which creates space for James Harden, who was amazing again, had a triple-double. And on the other side, Draymond Green as well. Besides his ending with his kick, he had 20 points, he had 15 boards, he had 9 assists. So those players were really playing at an elite level. It's just that the Houston Rockets had more players that seemed to be able to contribute, and that's why I highlighted the bench as well as the three-point shooting. The 3 times in NBA history where teams combined for the most three-point shot attempts, The Houston Rockets were involved each one. That's who they are. That's who they are marketed to be. The difference this year, as opposed to the last couple of years, however, is that their roster wasn't tailored to do it. Eric Gordon, Trevor Ariza, Ryan Anderson, these are catch and shoot, knockdown players who over 50% of their shot attempts will be threes, and they were really effective in that game.
I know Draymond's your guy. I know you're both from the Mitten. All right? I know he's your guy. But I have to ask, why does he continue to kick people? Now, he used to kick people in the groin, okay? And in the offseason, the referees were like, we're not going to let people, we're going to make a point to make sure that there's no groin shots in the league anymore. So now he's kicking people in the head. Now he's just went to kick people in the head. Why is he kicking people? What is going through his mind? What is actually happening in his head when this happens?
Well, he or nobody is going to excuse the behavior because it's become a pattern. It happened with Steven Adams. It happened with LeBron James. And now it happened with James Harden. And here's a bit of geometry that may go over people's head. If you look back at high school footage and college footage, Draymond Green being in the air and landing in a scissor, 1 foot on the ground, 1 foot in the air, is actually something he's done frequently. And you ask, why does that happen? Well, he's 6'7", playing against players that are a lot clearly taller and a lot more bulky in a lot of situations. So whether he's trying to flop to get the call defensively or he's trying to create contact offensively, unlike a Blake Griffin who's going to go up on 2 feet and come down on 2 feet usually, he normally comes down landing on 1 foot trying to flail. And because of that, gets out of control, which is something that he has to obviously fix. Because when you're getting flagrant fouls or you're getting suspended in the playoffs like he did last year, it clearly is going to cost your basketball team.
I'm a little suspicious of all of this kicking, Jalen. I do believe you. I think he does have a natural tendency, an unconscious natural tendency to rise up with his legs when he feels contact around him, just to make himself big, just to push people away from him, also to draw contact, to get the referee's attention. He does do that, and he's not maliciously trying to kick people in the head as much as I make it seem like that. However, if you look at when this happens, it always happens in a big game. It always happens when the Warriors are down. It always happens during like a point in the game in which Draymond is frustrated. So there is a part of me that believes it's somewhat intentional as a sort of offensive weapon to hurt his opponents. Do you agree with me?
Somewhat I agree, but usually when scenarios happen that we highlight, it is just because it's a big game. And the Thursday night tilts have been set up in the NBA almost like the Monday night tilts are set up in football, where the rest of the league is watching those teams perform. Those weren't the only scenarios in which he kicked people. It's just the ones that we are highlighting because, as you mentioned, they took place in big games.
Oh, he's got at least a dozen kicking incidents in his past. Now, there's something I want to point out about this game that had nothing to do with what happened. Sitting there in the stands, a gentleman by the name of Cameron Newton.
I thought you were going to say Fab Five Freddy.
Nope. Cam Newton was there. And last year, if you remember, he went to a Hornets game, decked out head to toe in Hornets gear. Last night, in Oracle, he was decked out in what, Jalen Rose?
Warriors. Representing Steph Curry in particular, who, if you remember pre-Super Bowl, the gentleman Curry, who was raised in Charlotte area, obviously was representing the Carolina Panthers in the Super Bowl, hit the gong before the game, was really trying to do what he could to rally the football team that he roots for. So Cam Newton, clearly a basketball fan, was just returning a favor. It's all love.
I have one message for Mr. Newton. Get off the bandwagon.
Get off the bandwagon.
I have a simple question, Jalen Rose, one that we've been asked earlier in the week as well, but it's got a little bit of a different spin on it now. That question is this. Are the Clippers for real?
Are the Clippers for real?
I think we talked about that at the beginning of the season when we acknowledged that we anticipated that they would be in the Western Conference Finals. Mm-hmm. You have to be for real, especially when that's something that their franchise has never achieved.
When you go into Indiana, only score 70 points in a loss, and then you go into Brooklyn and your coach gets kicked out and you lose to the Nets, it starts to look bad. Zach Lowe starts writing things about your franchise. It all looked bad. And then there they go into Cleveland and they absolutely dismantle mantled the Cleveland Cavaliers. One thing I want to talk to you about is we always talk about that 3 spot on the Clippers roster. Right now, it's Mbah a Moute who's holding that. Mbah a Moute did a great job against LeBron James. LeBron James shot 5 for 14 on the night. Could this be the starting 5 for the Clippers throughout the season? Could Mbah a Moute concrete his spot there through his defense?
If they don't make any moves, he's going to be the starting 3. That's been well established over Johnson, clearly, because he's getting the quality minutes, and over Ryan Anderson and over Allen Anderson, who hasn't played a lot. Here's the deal and why the Clippers won. Each of their rotation players that have gotten a new contract with the team played in character. 4 of their starting 5 scored in double figures. That's the backcourt of CP3, as well as J.J. Redick, who had 21 points in the first half.
Yep.
Then you have Blake Griffin, who led the game with 11 assists.
Yep.
And then DeAndre Jordan, who had double-figure rebounds. You look down at the substitutes, Jamal Crawford, Austin Rivers, both scoring double figures. The glaring statistic that hampered the Cleveland Cavaliers, 12 assists, 18 turnovers. That was the key. I'm not surprised that they lost the rebound battle, but that's the key because they're going to isolate a lot. That's who Kyrie is. That's the guy that's going to lead the team in scoring. Kevin Love has to do a better job of mixing up his game. He didn't get his season average, and LeBron James either. So you have to give a lot of credit to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and they did a really good job of not allowing players like Tristan Thompson, J.R. Smith, Channing Frye to have signature games.
There was a moment during this game in which Paul Pierce was setting a pick. It was an NBA pick. Nothing too crazy about it. He might have swayed a little bit to his left to make sure he made contact with Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving did not enjoy that. And Kyrie Irving, as Paul Pierce was running away, gave him like a little left-handed little punch to the ribs. My question for you is, was Kyrie just trying to acknowledge the fact that he was there, or was he actually trying to hurt Paul Pierce?
Just acknowledge he was there. He knew that punch wouldn't bust a grape in a fruit fight. It was just him trying to have a reflex during the situation.
How often do these little sort of short Bruce Lee little shots happen during NBA games?
They happen often because you're in close quarters. There's a lot of grabbing, holding, grappling that's going to take place. Usually won't go called by the officiating or the game would take forever.
Do you think that the Cavaliers should be worried about this performance?
I do not think so. Here's why. Who's the second best team in the East?
Raptors,
Exactly.
Pacers, Celtics, Hornets.
Exactly. So with that being said, as long as they're healthy and they have LeBron James, it's clear that that team is going to have a rite of passage to the NBA Finals. But here's what's crucial, and it took place last year.
What's up?
If they're able to beat the brakes off of the teams that they face in the playoffs, first round, second round conference finals, they now get rest. And if they're well rested going against the Western Conference foe, that regardless to who wins, we know Golden State, San Antonio, the Clippers will all be in the mix, and it's going to be a war of attrition to see who advances. A fresh Cleveland Cavalier team may be able to do what they did last year because they're in the inferior conference from top to bottom.
That sounds exactly like my reasoning for picking them to win the championship last year and sticking with that pick all the way through until they won.
You did.
Yep. There's a game tonight between the Cavaliers and the Bulls. First, more exciting than the game itself will be LeBron James in Chicago in full Cubs uniform as he enters the game. I'm really excited about this. I have one simple question. Do you think he will wear the cleats?
He's already acknowledged that he won't wear the cleats.
Oh, come on.
And here's the thing.
You walk into
an NBA arena, those are marble floors.
Oh,
he clearly slipped.
Jalen. Okay, I might slip if I was wearing cleats on marble floors. The production staff might slip if they're wearing cleats on marble floors. We're talking about one of the best athletes in the world. You know what I mean? We're talking about
that
one
has
of the best
nothing to do
athletes in the
with
world.
falling.
He can't walk 100 yards on concrete in cleats. You got to you got to do it, man. Anyone who's ever played baseball knows you walk through the parking lot, you walk through this and that. It's not that hard to walk with cleats on.
I've always wondered when I'm watching baseball games why they have these 50, 60-plus-year-old skippers dressed in full uniform. You don't see that in basketball and football, but I guess that's another subject for another day.
I would love to see Jim Harbaugh in pads. Jim Harbaugh would wear pads if they would let him. If they would let him, he would wear a helmet and coach the entire game. You know that about Jim Harbaugh. Yep. Well, in regards to that game, there's a lot of talk about Dwayne Wade and LeBron James' time in Miami and this and that. And when Dwayne Wade was asked about sacrificing when LeBron came to Miami and who sort of had to adjust the most, here's what he definitively said, quote, "I definitely changed mine more. It's not even a conversation. There's no conversation to have. I definitely had to change mine more." Why is he so definitive with this?
Basically what he's saying is you go from living by yourself to now having a roommate.
Oh, we've all done that. We all know that's an adjustment.
There is some adjustment. And so basically that's what he's speaking towards. But the bottom line is he added the MVP of the league, the guy that actually won finals MVP both times they won the championship. I think it's the moral compass of everything being Wade County, already won a championship there, having to acknowledge that he wasn't the best player on his own team. And as I see LeBron and D. Wade, I appreciate and enjoy their friendship and the fact that they're both future Hall of Famers. But as a fan, I feel somewhat deprived that those two guys disable and disarm the competition to the point where we didn't truly get a chance to see the two best players in their conference, along with Carmelo Anthony, their other banana boat friend, actually have rivalry in the Eastern Conference.
Well, maybe we'll see a little bit of that rivalry flare up this evening. Yep. The Thursday night games in the NFL have not been particularly enticing matchups up to this point, let's be honest. So much so that they're talking about actually discontinuing the Thursday night games. However, last night we did have a good matchup between two pretty good teams. Obviously, one of the best teams in the NFL, the Dallas Cowboys, went to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. Game was a little bit closer than we expected. It came down to a crucial 2-point conversion with Sam Bradford under center, and he got hit in the face as they did not convert the 2-point play. Do you believe that they should have gotten another chance at that?
Absolutely. It was a penalty, and you would like to see the penalty called. Regardless whether it's Cam Newton, who we talked about early in the season, wasn't getting roughing calls, or Sam Bradford, in this case, who clearly got hit in the helmet by the defender, and the official acknowledged to him for some strange reason that he didn't get hit when he clearly did get hit. And back to what you said about those Thursday night football games, the reason why on paper they haven't been as attractive is the notable football franchises. There are about 5 of them. The Packers, the Cowboys, the Pittsburgh Steelers, Packers, Cowboys, Pittsburgh Steelers, Patriots. They play on Thursday night, but if you notice, they don't play against one another. So we get the Texans twice. We get the Jets twice. We get those type of teams that they're still trying to get national coverage for. And in this case, we got Minnesota. And yes, they have a stout defense. Mm-hmm. I love watching Rhodes and Terrence Newman play. They were stout defensively.
Held the Cowboys to 17 points.
But their offensive line, their running game without Adrian Peterson, their punter, their kicking game, it was just brutal to watch until that last drive in theory that you just talked about where they actually put together a quality one, went down and scored. But I was not someone that felt like they had what it took to get a 2-point conversion, whether they called a false start, which they didn't, whether they called helmet to the head, hands to the helmet, which they didn't. If they would have got another play on the 1, I still feel like they would have gotten stopped. So give all of the credit to the Dallas Cowboys. Their win streak continues.
Take me inside the mind of Tony Romo as he watches everything unfold. Does he root for the team to win?
Tony Romo has an emotional and mental end game that everybody's not paying attention to. Look no further than last year. We just saw this happen with Brock Osweiler and Peyton Manning. Something could quickly happen where Tony Romo could already be under center. And what better situation for it to happen than late in the season or in the playoffs? Well, once I get in and he's hurt, you can't take me out now. And because of that, unfortunately, I think at that point he would be the scapegoat because I don't see this team on a level to be able to win the Super Bowl this year.
What?
But when I look around the land, I'm being cut off right now. When I look around the landscape of sports, I've seen some unlikely winners this year. We saw it happen in Major League Baseball. We saw it happen in basketball with the Cavs. You don't remember the last time they won a championship before this previous year?
The franchise unlikely wins, but they were certainly one of the best teams in the NBA.
We've seen some unlikely winners, and maybe that's going to happen in the NFL this year with Gronk going down in the AFC, makes that more wide open. With Seattle, who we feel like is the second best team in the NFC, who've shown weeks where they struggled and haven't scored touchdowns. If there is a season that may open up and allow the Dallas Cowboys to win the championship, it may take place in this one. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Ride with me on this one. The Cleveland Cavaliers win the NBA Finals. The city of Cleveland just rejoices. The parade attracts millions of people. The Chicago Cubs win Major League Baseball World Series. Just hundreds of years of just relief washes over the city of Chicago. This is a pattern, Jalen. It's all setting up for the Detroit Lions to win the Super Bowl. Can't you feel it? Can't you feel it? Talk about unlikely franchise winners. It's a trend. 3 makes a trend. Detroit Lions, Super Bowl champions. Matt Stafford just raising the Vince Lombardi over his head triumphantly and then injures his shoulder for next year.
You're not going to catch me out there on that one.
Rob?
We got a stout 5 weeks coming up.
Sure do. Gronkowski has had back surgery. Now reports are that he will likely be out for the season. In the event that he is available, it puts them in the Super Bowl, and you're bringing somebody back that hasn't played. It just seems unlikely that he will play again this season. One thing that is notable that our colleague, Adam Schefter, pointed out, big shout to Raekwon the Chef, he pointed out that the story of the back surgery was originally reported by a Buffalo newspaper. Where's Rob Gronkowski's family from, Jalen Rose?
Buffalo.
Exactly. The upstate New York. I believe Rochester, Buffalo area. Well, it's possible that the Gronkowski family is the source of the back surgery information, and Adam Schefter makes the logical leap that it's possible that the Gronkowski family leaked this information because they were upset that Gronk played in last week's game. What do you make of this information?
Well, he comes from a football family, so you have to take that into account. It's not just like someone's family who isn't affiliated closely with the sport trying to be a part of the media and trying to leak information. So I respect how it's being done from that aspect. But if they didn't want him to play last week, they could have kept him from playing last week. Nobody forced him to go out there and play. So that's a personal decision. He knew he was dealing with an injury that's been hampering him for a really long time, back to college. And the unfortunate thing about this, I just hope that now that he's having this surgery, it doesn't affect his long-term ability to be available for the New England Patriots, because playing tight end at a physical nature, the ability to block on the line plus run routes, you clearly are going to take hits, and it's clearly a physical sport. So now you have to wonder how he's going to be able to recover after this latest surgery.
You'll never believe this, Jalen Rose, but the NFL has announced that they're going to hire 17 full-time officials. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Who would have thought that hiring officials that are only officials and officials only is a good idea for the National Football League? What do you make about this?
That Troy Vincent and Roger Goodell watch our show.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
Just email us.
That's what I think.
All you have to do is just hit us on the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed if you need more information. We'll gladly give it to you for free. Jalen Rose, I've kind of fallen in love with Kirk Cousins this year. It's just kind of happened to me. I love his personality. I love his catchphrases. I love nothing more than the hair tussle on the general manager. Effectively, his boss just gave him a little hair tussle after victories. I love how fired up he gets. I love the fact that he's taken this Washington franchise and turned them around a little bit as the season has progressed. But I learned one more thing about Kirk Cousins that just took me over the top. It is this. Quote, I love musical theater. My mom kind of raised me on that. When the Super Bowl was in New York City a couple of years ago, I went to a Broadway show and was just blown away. What? I love his love of Broadway. Not only that, There's footage of Kirk Cousins in college. He's performing in musicals. He's in an a cappella group. I just absolutely love this. And I just want to get your take. Do you own or have you ever owned or do you listen to Broadway musicals in any way, shape, or form?
Broadway musicals, the classic is The Wiz or The Wizard of Oz. Diana Ross and Michael Jackson. No question, fam.
That's a movie. Have you ever, you've been to one. You went to Hamilton, right?
I did. I went to see Hamilton, which was terrific. And if I recall, it's still the hottest thing happening on Broadway.
See, what I love about this is I love that Kirk Cousins, the leader of some of the most masculine men on the planet, like this, in this very testosterone-driven, environment that he's in every single day of the week, that he can admit that he loves Broadway musicals. He doesn't just hide it on the side. He opens with it and he owns it. And I love any dude that's like, you know what? I love a cappella. I want to sing in an a cappella group. I don't care if my friends judge me. I don't care if the other guys on the team judge me. He's just owning it. And this is why I love Kirk Cousins. Are you ready to jump on the Kirk Cousins bandwagon with me? Sing it, Jalen. Sing it.
You like that?
Not at all. He is a really productive player. He's taken advantage of the franchise tag this season. Probably is going to have to do it next season, which is really good for him. I just want to pump the brakes for media members thinking that just because somebody plays quarterback that they're the leader. Just because you play quarterback, that don't make you the leader of the team and the leader of men and the other 52 guys just follow him. That's cliche.
Jalen, it's a leadership role. You know that. You're calling the plays in the huddle. The quarterback is a leadership role on a football team. And you cannot deny that a football team is a very sort of like masculine, tough environment where men are men and they don't use forks and spoons. They don't do that kind of thing. It's not a Broadway musical play. You know in the locker room they're not playing the soundtrack from Cats. You know that's not happening in the locker room. And that's why I love this from Kirk Cousins. Like, I just like it.
Hit the brakes.
No.
You do know that the coaches call the plays, right?
I know, but he relays it. He relays it to the rest of the team.
You do know when the quarterback.
Are we arguing about whether the quarterback is a leadership position on football? You will disagree with me about anything.
You do know when the quarterback at the line of scrimmage, there's a coordinator in his ear telling him exactly what he should do next. You know that that's taking place, right?
Oh, yeah, you're right. Your quarterback is totally not a leadership position on a football team. I'm wrong, Jalen. You're right. God. I have a simple question for you. What is Conor McGregor doing? Like, what is he doing?
Trolling.
Like, what's really happening? Obviously, I'm referring to him getting a boxing license in California. Like, this is what it seems like to me. It seems like every time he gets a little spat with Dana White and the rest of the UFC because they took one of his belts, he has to act out. He has to lash out. Remember last time? I'm retiring. I'm never going to do that again. And this time he goes and gets licensed in California to box. But what do you think this will ultimately amount to?
What I see happening in a professional, respectful way, it's taking place in all sports where the players form unions and then they go for more rights that they feel like they're deserved, whether they're health concerns, whether they're fiscal challenges.
Retirement packages.
I see,
sure.
Absolutely. What I'm seeing from mixed martial artists is that they're trying to do a better job of taking care of themselves because they feel like the brand is not doing such. And since he's the most notable fighter that they have, he's just taking it to a different extreme.
Major League Baseball has a new collective bargaining agreement, and one sort of footnote is that new players that enter the league are not going to be able to use smokeless tobacco. My question for you, have you ever tried smokeless tobacco?
I've never tried smokeless tobacco, but here's what I don't understand. So let me get this right. I'm in a clubhouse, it's 25 players as such. Mm-hmm. I can't use it because I'm new, but everybody else can?
That's the rule. That's the rule.
Let me get some of that.
Yes. As someone who has dabbled in smokeless tobacco, it is the absolute worst. It is terrible. You feel like you want to vomit. Some of this tobacco juice drips down into your throat. You're just like, why am I doing this? It tastes awful. It gave me, I got lightheaded and felt like I was going to pass out. I don't see how anyone enjoys smokeless tobacco. It is just an awful experience. And anyone listening to this, if you ever think about trying any sort of smokeless tobacco, just don't. Trust me.
My mother smoked cigarettes. I've never tried to smoke one. Not a fan of cigars in any way, shape, or form. I remember an era where, whether it was athletes or actors, actually were used in cigarette ads to make it cool for the public.
Oh, yeah.
That just got rebranded nowadays, and it's called vaping.
Yep. And don't sleep on this, Jalen. Remember Big League Chew? Yep. I loved Big League Chew as a kid. It was shaped like a smokeless tobacco pouch. It was shredded gum like it was smokeless tobacco. So I'm sitting there watching Lenny Dykstra on my television. I'm like, I want to be like Lenny Dykstra, and I'm 9 or 8 years old. I go and buy Big League Chew, literally marketed towards children as a gateway drug towards smokeless tobacco. It's gross. It's just oh God, it's so bad. It just makes you want to vomit and pass out all at the same time. It's awful.
And cigars last too long.
Oh yeah, I don't have an hour and a half for anything. Not even
How
not
you
even
put
a movie.
the thing out?
Yeah, for real, it doesn't even go out. Just dip. It's like oh, this is awful. I feel like I'm gonna throw up. And my friend's like, oh, just dip it in some cognac. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not gonna dip it in cognac. If I want cognac,
this is
I'll
Louis
drink
the 13th.
cognac.
I ain't dumping no sick cigar in there.
Tobacco in there. That's disgusting.
But no ashes in my drink.
Can you present a scenario to me in which your Michigan Wolverines come out of this weekend as probable playoff football team?
Go Colorado Buffaloes! That's all I got to say. And a close, not well-played Big Ten championship game between Wisconsin and Penn State.
Like a 0-0
like
tie.
21.
Yeah, a lot of turnovers.
Like 17-13, just an ugly game. Follow the money. Follow the money.
Okay, so here's what you need. Let me just tell you the real. You need Colorado to beat Washington, improbable. You need a 0-0 tie in the Big Ten game, and you need Virginia Tech to beat Clemson. It's been an extremely entertaining season for the Wolverines. However, they will not put on those helmets again this season.
We will. We going to a bowl game regardless.
No one's watching. Jalen Rose, every week on Friday, we're going to take a look at the week in the NBA, and we're going to tell you who came up, who stayed up, and who messed up. I'm going to start. We all remember him from college basketball last year, but he wasn't picked to be Rookie of the Year. He was overshadowed by other talents like Ben Simmons and mysteries like Thon Maker. There's so much discussion about Joel Embiid that everyone just glossed right over my man Jamal Murray. Not too many people are watching Nuggets games. I understand that. Not the most entertaining team to watch, but if you are watching, you will see that after going without a field goal for his first 4 NBA games, 4 NBA games went by, he did not have a field goal. He's now averaging 10 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists while shooting 41% from three-point range. Jamal Murray, you came up.
I appreciate you looking deeper into the box score. I like that a lot. The player I have that came up, you saw him play 6 straight days at UConn. His team won each night. Put on a show in college basketball, game winners, ultimately a national championship. He plays in Charlotte, and they're one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, and I anticipate he'll be an all-star this year. His name is Kemba Walker.
Great call. So I would say this, that looking at rosters and teams and move they made and what I expected from them this season, that the Hornets are one of the biggest surprises. Would you agree?
Absolutely, because again, when we talk about who's the second best team in the Eastern Conference, if you don't want to mention them, when you look down at the standings, they have to be in the conversation so far this year.
And when you also look at the 8 teams from the East that made the playoffs, and you look at some other teams that improved that didn't make the playoffs, you're wondering, well, who's going to be out? And I had always pegged the Hornets as that team that would drop out of the top 8 in the East, and now I have to look at myself after 20 games and say, you know what? I was wrong about that. So now let's look at who stayed up. Like, who's already been up, but who stayed up. And I have to look no further than my man, Karl Anthony Towns, who put
the big cat
47 points on Kristaps Porzingis and the New York Knicks, the third youngest player in the last 30 years with a 45-point, 15-rebound game. Karl Anthony Towns has been so impressive this year with his array of offensive abilities. He is very comfortable posting up and catching it with his back to the basket. He is very comfortable outside the arc and not a bad passer. Karl Anthony Towns stayed up this week in the NBA.
And I like that you acknowledged him as a player that stayed up, because coming into this year, NBA GMs were polled about which player they would build a team around. He was their choice. My player that stayed up plays in Milwaukee, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Yes, he got a big deal this offseason.
Sure did.
But he continues to acknowledge what I've talked about for years is positionless basketball. A 7-foot player that in theory is the primary ball handler, sometimes the tallest guy out on the floor, gets you points, gets you rebounds, gets you assists, gets blocks, gets steals. A Milwaukee Bucks, a team that hovers around the playoffs these last couple of years. Now all of a sudden you have to go with Jabari Parker. It seems like they're figuring it out. So he's a guy that stayed up. And don't be surprised if he also is a first-time All-Star this year.
Jason Kidd, the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks, said that special players like Kobe, like Shaq, like LeBron come around every so often. And he is claiming that your guy, the Greek freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo,
not just needy, he was gonna need it.
One of
did
those
the freak with me.
I kind of think Jason Kidd took a little too far with that one. Do you agree with Jason Kidd that Giannis is one of those special talents?
You gotta look at it like this. There were years where people felt like Milwaukee would be a team, if a team left the current city that it plays in, it would be that team. They haven't had an all-star since the early 2000s in Michael Redd.
That's a good point.
So because of that, now for them to get a chance to see what could be a transcendent player, an all-star, multi-all-star caliber player, he just talking towards what's happening in Milwaukee. I don't think he was necessarily putting them in the class of the players you mentioned.
Oh, no, he was doing that. And I'm going to tell him to pump the brakes when he starts talking about Giannis Antetokounmpo in the same breath as LeBron and Kobe and Shaq, okay? Like, Jason Kidd, like, no. I know he's on your team. I know you want him to be confident, but, like, let's wait a couple years before we start talking like that. Now we get to the fun part. We're going to tell you who messed up this week in the NBA. For me, it's J.R. Smith. You know, how do I explain? Mr. Smith was playing defense against Snell, covering him as they were about to inbound the ball. Out of the corner of his eye, he sees a familiar face. That face is Jason Terry's face.
What's up, family?
Jason Terry stands up.
Good to see you.
Give him a hug. Hey, JR.
We both in new places.
How you
Before I
been?
was in Boston, you was in New York.
Yeah, remember when you
had
elbowed
our
me in the
little
head? Yeah, but let's show the world that we've mended those fences. Let's show the world that we are peaceful. Let's show the world that we're above that we're mature adults that have children. So let's just show the world and give each other a nice little pound here before they inbound the ball. But here's where J.R. Smith messed up. Jason Terry doesn't want to show the world that you've mended those fences. Jason Terry doesn't want to give you a pound. Jason Terry is manipulating you, J.R. Smith. Jason Terry is pulling a vet move on someone with a reputation for not being 100% focused 100% of the time, and you walk off the court and fell for it. After the game, he said, quote, "Oh, I didn't know I was in the game. My bad. Here's another thing. LL, that's a lie, okay? You knew you were in the game. You just didn't have an explanation for it. You didn't want to look at the reporter and say, my bad, I just wanted to give Jason Terry a pound, and I messed up. You knew you were in the game. And another thing is media members, I know I don't get on media members a lot, is don't take his words at surface value. Like, don't act like J.R. Smith literally did not know he was in the game. Because if you are not in the game, where do you sit, Jalen?
On the bench, on the other end of the floor, as a matter of fact.
On your bench. So he knew he was in the game. Let's be honest. Let's be real. Who messed up for you in the NBA this week?
And the wrong week to be a Cleveland Cavalier to make that mental mistake, especially how they played against the Clippers at home. The player that I have is not just one. 2, 3, or 5. When you look at the standings, you start throwing out who you feel like has the worst record in the league, and just
Sixers,
it will take you a while to get to The Dallas Mavs.
Oh, I would name, if you said
hold that honor.
Before this season, you said who are the teams that would have the worst records in the league. I would say Magic, Sixers, Suns, maybe even Lakers before I would say Mavs.
And I'm surprised by that dubious distinction for a team that went out this year, paid big money for Harrison Barnes, who's played well, Andrew Bogut. The year prior, Wes Matthews, he was coming off an injury. The year prior to that, Darren Williams. This is a veteran bunch that's really struggling, playing with one of the greatest players to do it in Dirk Nowitzki, who's going to the Hall of Fame, and one of the best coaches in the game in Rick Carlisle. Maybe Mark Cuban saw this coming when he started banning national media earlier in the year.
Perhaps Dirk Nowitzki is feeling a little tinge of regret about going through this slog of an 82-game season one more time with this team. Yeah. One of the games that I'm most excited for this weekend is the 7-4 division-leading Detroit Lions going to New Orleans to face a Saints offense that puts up 40 points a game. On a scale from not worried about a thing, we're going to be 8-4 on Monday, to, ooh, what would it look like if we're 7-5 on Monday? Where are you as a Lions fan?
I'm worried about Brandon Cooks. That's all I have to say about that game. Worried about him.
Great. Cool. We'll move on then.
It's going to be a shootout. And it's only right if it's a close game. Matthew Stafford, Drew Brees, slinging it around the lot, putting up big numbers, yards, touchdowns, points on the board. It's going to be a tough win to get on the road. But we're a dome team as well.
Another game that you're going to have somewhat of a rooting interest in is going to be a Saturday night at 8 o'clock in Lucas Oil Stadium. That is a Big Ten championship game that does not feature one of the two best teams in the Big Ten. I don't think it's unfair to say that Ohio State and Michigan are the two best teams in the Big Ten. However, the Big Ten champion will either be Penn State or Wisconsin. As a Michigan Wolverine, just detail me the ideal outcome for this contest.
The ideal outcome really is that it's 10-3.
What about,
and I don't care
who wins. I
wins.
want like a 0-0 tie. I want like a 3-3 tie with a bunch of turnovers. The coach
multiple
gets kicked out
punts,
of the game.
Interceptions,
a fight, like a
fumbles.
Fight. No, let's have a big fight, like a brawl at halftime where 5 players from each team get kicked out, and the committee looks at them like we can't reward this.
But here's the thing that the public must pay attention to. This happened four times in presidential elections. The president is not elected, he's clearly selected. And we seeing that happen in the college football playoff. Here's why. Follow the money. Alabama could lose the SEC championship game. They'll still be ranked number 1.
Oh, no question.
Ohio State did not win the Big Ten.
Not even playing.
They're ranked number 2.
And they're going to stay
so
there.
You cannot tell me if Colorado doesn't beat Washington and the Big Ten title game is 10-7 and it's just what we described, that the University of Michigan Wolverines will not be the more attractive choice to play against Alabama in that 1-4 game. Don't believe me? Just watch.
Let me ask you a question, Mr. Rose. Now that we've brought this hypothetical into life, what do you think would happen in that game between Alabama and Michigan?
Oh, that's another subject for another day.
Okay. Yeah. No, I get it.
All of this, so I got to be 100.
No. You want to argue your way to get to a game against Alabama. Are you sure you want to watch a dude named Jalen just run rampant all over your Michigan Wolverines?
I know. I saw this happen last year when Michigan State blocked the punt late. Mm-hmm. These Jalen's are coming back to haunt me.
They sure are. Maybe the popularity of your name is actually a curse. One thing that's very important to me this weekend, the Lions game is important to you. You know, these different college games are important to you. Well, here's one thing that's important to me. It is the finale of the phenomenal inaugural season of HBO's Westworld. I talked to you about this before. I told you said you were going to watch it. I described it to you. Spoiler alert. We found that Bernard is Arnold, and then William is the man in black. There's going to be so many revelations. Where's the center of the maze? Who's going to get there? What's Ford going to do? I am so excited for Westworld that I am much more excited for that 1 hour than I am the other 13 hours of football that I will watch on Sunday. I cannot wait until we dedicate at least 4 segments to that finale on Monday, in which you just stare at me with a blank face and make jokes about the words I say.
There's been a lot of sports happening in pro and college basketball and football. Then I've been on the road. So when I had a chance to binge watch, had to catch up on my Breakfast Clubs, had to catch up on Empire. But I do want to watch that program. I got to check it out.
You didn't catch up on Empire. You've dropped Empire like 2 years ago. You still watching Empire? You still watching Empire?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're caught up to Empire? You're the only person in my life that's still watching Empire. I just thought everyone kind of dropped Empire last season. I dropped it last season.
I just watched it the other day. I love when Cookie was reminiscing about the fact that her dad told her not to date who she ended up dating. And
is it Little Romeo on it this season or something?
How once he basically found a package in the house that she got from Lewis. She probably was holding it for him. He kicked her out because he had a couple of other daughters he wanted to protect. And unfortunately, a couple of days later, he passed away.
You know what? We've done this show for a long time, and I'm starting to notice a theme in some of the sort of artistic endeavors that you intake. And I can't fully put my finger on it. Oh, yes, I can. You always watch stuff that has all black people in it.
Now you see why in college football there's not that many black coaches.
I asked you to name a Broadway musical, and you just went with The Wiz. You were like, The Wiz. That's the only musical I know. The Wiz. That's the only Broadway musical.
There's a sense of familiarity that happens in a power structure. You see it play out in the limited amount of collegiate football coaches, the limited amount of owners that look like me.
Another game that I know you'll be paying attention to, as will I, has the New York Giants at 8-3, a very sneaky 8-3 New York Giant team that beat the Cowboys, mind you, the only team that has done so this season, will be facing the Steelers in Pittsburgh. Who do you think will win that one?
My better half and her family will be taking this game personal. I will be watching the game, rooting for the Giants to keep home happy, absolutely. That's who I'm going to pick in this game. And you, someone that's happily married, know why I'm doing it.
Of course I do. And in pop culture, one last thing. There's a movie out called Anonymous. I know absolutely nothing about it. Are you excited about this movie, Anonymous?
No, won't see it. But I did go to the movies last weekend. You'd be proud of me.
Wait. You went to the movies? Oh, I know what you saw. Give it to me.
Loving.
Starring a woman by the name of Ruth Negga, who is
now can I say something?
Wife's doppelganger. She looks exactly like my wife, to the point where it is creepy. It's like we first found her probably 3 years ago, and when I Googled her, I literally thought I was looking at pictures of my wife. So big shout to the gorgeous, the most beautiful actress in the whole entire game, Ruth Negga. The best looking woman I've ever seen on screen, Ruth Negga.
So we sit down in the movie, Molly's like, she looked like Joey. And I pull out my phone and about to text you. She was like, no, don't text him that because Joey looked way better than her.
I just wish that her last name was different.
Yeah, don't pronounce that the wrong way.
If you dial 985-80-JALEN, you will get a voicemail. And you can leave questions for us on that voicemail, opinions about what we talk about on the voicemail, feedback, or just give us a compliment. Whatever you would like. Call 985-80-JALEN. We'll take the best ones and we'll play them on the show. We have not heard these beforehand. Let's listen to the first voicemail.
Hey, Jalen Jacoby. This is Sid from Texas by way of Huntsville, Alabama. Huge fan. I'm actually listening to the podcast right now on my way to work. I just got one question for you guys. Do you think this is the year we will finally see LeBron and D-Wade face each other in the playoffs?
No. Simple answer. First of all, big shout to you. We just happened to play that voicemail while we celebrate the great state of Texas. And Alabama continues to dominate college football. So you are enjoying yourself, I am sure. But to get to your question, will the Bulls face the Cavs in the playoffs. I could see it potentially as a 1-8 matchup, but I do not see the Bulls getting to the second round unless they are the 8th seed.
We disagree. I think this is a season where that could take place. As players, obviously winning championships is the most important thing. They won 2 together. They won apart. But as a fan of the game, we were deprived that they were playing in the same conference for all of this time and haven't truly had that type of rivalry where their teams were facing each other consistently in the playoffs. I think this year it can take place in the second round.
I disagree, but we'll continue to see how this plays out as the season progresses. Big shout to Said. We love people that listen to the podcast, especially people that listen to it at work when they're supposed to be doing something else. Those are our people. Those are our people. The ones that don't really want to work that hard, that procrastinate, that do fun things first and then finish up their work before the end of the day. Hopefully you are one of us, Said. Let's listen to our next voicemail.
What's going on, guys? Jalen Jacoby. My name is Rico. Been listening for probably forever now, even back in the Pop the Trunk days. My question is, what players would you consider to be on the Mount Rushmore on keep getting them checks? Classing players like, I don't know, maybe Elton Brand. But yeah, just keep doing things. Keep getting them checks, Jalen. Keep getting them checks, Jacoby. And you'll have a good one.
Good question, Rico. First of all, shout out to you with the Pop the Trunk reference. I appreciate you listening. We love our podcast listeners, our long-time listeners. Jalen, just name one player who deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore of keep getting them checks.
So, first off, I got to lay down the criteria of what it takes to be a part of a keep getting them checks team. All ski mask and gloves team.
Good. Please do.
It has to be a second deal, and it has to be a big deal. And when that player was signed, that player did a press conference. There was articles about how he was going to be a game-changing signing. And then you watch that team play, whether win or lose, and it ain't because of the player that we're talking about. So in this case, and I know he's injured, but there's a reason why when he returns to play against Dallas, he's going to get booed, and they're waiting to see what's going to happen while he's in Memphis. Right now, with new money, the last couple of years, it has to be one of my guys, by the way.
Oh, no.
Chandler Parsons.
Wow. You're going after Chandy? You're going after Chandy with keep getting them checks? He's like 25.
I just got to look at the bread that he was able to amass in Dallas, and he was injured. And then the bread that he's getting now in Memphis. And unfortunately, he's injured. Not his fault. They signed him hurt. He was hurt in Houston when Dallas signed him.
He played pretty well for like 6 games. He was doing pretty well. They got a good 6 games out of him for that $60 million or whatever they paid him.
I remember being in the Staples Center watching he and Vince Carter run up and down the floor, and I thought he was the one that was 39 years old. And a week later, he's been out for injury. So I actually peeped that with my own 2 eyes. It ain't personal.
Would have thought that Chandler Parsons would get injured again. If you have not, make sure that you read the profile about Chandler Parsons and Mark Cuban's relationship. It opens a lot of eyes and into the relationship between athletes and owners and how unique theirs was. Let's listen to the next voicemail.
Yo, what up, though? Got a quick question. Will Kevin Durant participate in this year's three-point shooting contest? If not, who will knock off Klay Thompson?
Good question.
That's a really good question because the Golden State Warriors could legitimately, and I would deem for the first time in the history of the NBA, have 3 players on the same roster in the three-point shooting contest.
I'm not even looking that up. I'm just going to say it's never happened. It's never happened.
And it would be likely, not surprising, if any of those guys won. I definitely appreciate the acknowledgement with the what up, though, because when I hear that, either you're from Detroit or you got love for somebody that is. So I appreciate that.
Let's listen to the next voicemail.
What up, though? This is Trent from Melbourne, Australia. I love you guys. Listen to you every day, every single day from down under. Just want to ask, Who do you think will have more wins this season in Dallas? The Mavericks or the Cowboys?
Oh,
love you guys. Peace.
Oh, wow. Wow.
First of all, we have to acknowledge the what up, though. But you just said, if you say what up, though, you're from Detroit or have love for someone from Detroit. And I think that my man has love for Jalen Rose.
What up, though?
What up, though? He didn't even. I love that. What up, though? Play it again.
What up, though?
You know what? I think that What Up, Though is actually being popularized by this very program right here. And I want to spread the What Up, Though love everywhere, especially down under to Melbourne. Now I would like you to answer his question. More wins in Dallas. The Cowboys or the Mavs?
What up,
Well, it has to be the Mavs because they get 82 opportunities to play basketball. And if they don't win 15 games, they're getting close to being the worst team in the history of the NBA, and I don't anticipate that happening. But this more is a hat tip to the amazing season that the Cowboys are having, led by Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, Dez Bryant, and a defense that's played a lot better than most of us felt like it could in a season where they've won 11 consecutive games so far and continue to be the class not only of the NFC, but one of the classes of the league.
But you still don't consider them one of your 4 favorite teams to win the Super Bowl. Is this true? I want to get you on wax on this because you keep dismissing the Cowboys. You keep dismissing them.
So here's what happens. There's a regular season style, and then there's a postseason style. I just think being a young football team with a bend-or-don't-break defense when they can't control the clock may become a recipe for disaster when the playoffs happen, whether they're facing a team like Seattle that's been there, done that. That's just what I think. I don't mind being wrong. It's not personal. It's just what I anticipate is going to take place.
Well, I disagree.
So let's get you on wax. So what's going to happen with the Cowboys this year then?
What's going to happen with the Cowboys? I'm not going to say they're going to win the Super Bowl, but I would say they're one of my 4 favorite teams to win the Super Bowl. I would say Cowboys, Seahawks, Patriots, and Steelers would be my top 4 picks as potential Super Bowl champions this year in the NFL. Thank you so much for listening on ESPN Radio,
Thank you.
for watching on ESPN2s and ESPN News,
Thank you.
and especially for subscribing to the Jalen and Jacoby podcast.
Thank you. You're far too kind.
I'm Eric Carabell. On the latest fantasy-focused baseball podcast in December, Tristan Cockcroft and I discuss the new CBA affecting fantasy, Cespedes and Conforto, Segura and Haniger, and lots of other moves, plus hash browns.
Penn State has won 9 straight, the Big Ten title, and are ranked 5th in the nation. USC awaits winners of 8 in a row. The Rose Bowl game presented by Northwestern Mutual, January 2nd at 5 Eastern on ESPN Radio.